Hi, I'm Paramita, General Manager, Global Marketing and Development, Rio Tinto. Welcome to the session on START Empowering Aluminium, brought to you by CRU and Rio Tinto. Today, you will hear from Simon Trott, Chief Commercial Officer, Rio Tinto, who was recently announced as the next Chief Executive of our iron ore business. You will also hear from Aamir Paul, US Country President for Schneider Electric, John Hoffmeister, Vice President of Packaging Procurement and Sustainability, Anheuser-Busch InBev, Tolga Egrilmezer, Vice President Sales and Marketing, Aluminium Rio Tinto, Owen Dinsmore, Head of Aluminium Primary and Products, CRU, and Alf Barrios, our CEO of Aluminium Product Group, who was recently announced as the next Chief Commercial Officer for Rio Tinto. Hope you enjoy the session. If you have any questions, please use the live Q&A time for the panelists to address. If you want to follow up with queries, you will find many of my colleagues from Rio Tinto and CRU on the delegate list. We welcome the opportunity to share and learn from your thoughts on this initiative. With that, let me hand over to Simon.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome from Singapore. I sincerely hope you and your families are safe and healthy. What a year we all went through in 2020. One thing that we will all remember is that we're in this together. And together we made it through 2020. We will continue to meet the challenges our industry faces. At Rio Tinto, we delivered a strong safety and operational performance in the face of the significant challenges of the COVID pandemic. Our 2020 performance reflects the resilience of our business and the commitment of our employees, customers, suppliers, communities, and our host governments. Throughout 2020, the Rio Tinto team has been working closely with you, our customers, to ensure that the supply chains we cater to continued to operate seamlessly. Just as we did throughout the last year, we firmly believe that we need to work openly with our customers to ensure we are ready and able to address the needs and demands of the end users and the consumers we all work for. And that's why we're all here today. Climate change represents an unprecedented challenge, and it is a key topic for the metals and mining sector. We believe that sustainability and ESG considerations will be critical for all of us to address and to ensure our products stay ahead as the materials of choice. Rio Tinto produces materials that are essential to human progress. We have publicly acknowledged the reality of climate change for over 2 decades and have reduced our emissions footprint by over 30% in the decade to 2020. We have set ambitious emissions target to reduce our carbon intensity by a further 30% and our absolute emissions by a further 15% by 2030, alongside establishing a $1 billion fund to invest in climate-related projects. These targets will bring us closer to achieving our long-term goal of net zero emissions by 2050. In this COVID era, digitalisation is more important than ever to empower a sustainable future, and 2020 demonstrated that the digital transformation needs to be accelerated. We need to equip ourselves, the supply chain and our consumers with user-friendly and reliable data and analytics. We are committed to a more sustainable future, and I'm sure you have heard us say this before. Sustainability is not just about carbon and emissions, it has to be holistic. Last year, we, as a primary aluminium producer, announced 2 projects to bring closed-loop recycling solutions to our customers and our partnership with AB InBev, an industry leader, to develop a more sustainable aluminium beverage can. John and the AB InBev team just announced the world's most sustainable can for Michelob Ultra being piloted in the US, where they used Rio Tinto's aluminium. Congrats to all the people across AB InBev that worked on that initiative. I would also like to congratulate the Schneider Electric team on them being ranked the world's most sustainable corporation by Corporate Knight for 2021. We value them as customers, suppliers and end users. This is an ecosystem-wide initiative, and we need to be in this together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for this important milestone. The next step in Rio's sustainability journey, the next building block in our ecosystem, the launch of our new START product with you, our aluminium customers. It all starts here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Simon. I really appreciate that introduction. And yes, we are very proud of the Corporate Knights ranking, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I want to pick up on one of the themes that you've been talking about, which is what we've learned from COVID. You know, one of the big takeaways for us was what an interconnected world we still live in, and how dependent we are on our partners and our suppliers in making sure that we can continue to be resilient in the face of these shocks. The other big epiphany we had is that the best time to prepare for a crisis is before you find yourself in one. And I think that's an important takeaway, because as we think about climate change, I think one of the takeaways from COVID has been that the scale of that challenge requires a mobilization across industries, across partnerships, across sectors, in a way that we haven't seen perhaps ever. But it's necessary in this time, because the headway we have for the next 30 years is the last opportunity. Someone once said that this generation was the first to fully understand the impact of climate change and the last to have the resources to affect the outcome. So I think it's a great multi-generational responsibility to go affect change here. I wanted to start by telling you all a little bit about our journey. Simon shared the acknowledgement of Corporate Knights. Again, we're quite proud of that achievement, but this wasn't something that happened overnight. We've been working on this sustainability journey for over 15 years now. And like anything, it started out with a basic purpose because it was the right thing to do, because it was core to our mission. And as an energy automation, industrial automation company, we were driving software and hardware solutions that helped our customers build their own sustainability roadmaps. And then over time, we realized that our communities were demanding it, from shareholders to policymakers to customers to our own employees. I've spoken to graduates coming into Schneider Electric and asked them why they chose to join us. And our sustainability mission was one of the first reasons they pointed towards as what attracted them to the firm. So our entire community now has gone from sort of inquiring about this to now demanding it to be core to our mission. As part of that journey, one of the things we've also been looking at what's been happening in the financial markets. Earlier this week, Blackstone put out its updated letters to its CEO, portfolio companies, as well as to the broader community. And one of the data points in that I thought was particularly compelling was that $288 billion across ETFs and mutual funds were invested into sustainability assets. That's almost a 96% increase from 2019. And what's really heartening about that is one of the fears we had coming into the COVID crisis was that sustainability would somehow slow down. In fact, it's accelerated. I think the crisis, like I mentioned, has reminded us of our interdependence and how some of these challenges require forward planning. So to see that investment from the financial community is critically important. The other notion in the Blackstone letter was about transparency. To make these investments, to make this more available, both to institutional as well as retail investors, we need better information. And I think that's a critical part of the discussion we're having today about the START program, and I'll get on that in a minute. I want to share our journey in terms of what we are working on going forward. You've already heard about our recognition to date, but we've launched a new sustainability impact program that has 6 commitments we're making. Our first commitment is to act for a climate positive world, to be more efficient with our resources, to create and live with principles of trust in all our communities, to create equal opportunities for all our employees, regardless of their social background or gender, making sure that we harness the power of all generations, both education access, knowledge access, as well as retraining. And then ensure that we empower local communities. And then we have detailed commitments behind those 6 that form this sustainability impact program that goes out into 2025. One of the core elements of that program is our carbon footprint. And we're following the SBTI structure on this. So in the next 5 years, now 4 years, we will be carbon neutral in scope 1 and 2, which is really the carbon we consume in our day-to-day operations and that our facilities put out. By 2030, we'll be net zero, not using any offsets, and we'll have driven a 35 to 40% reduction in scope 3, which includes our partners and our downstream ecosystem. And by 2040, a full 10 years ahead of the Paris Accord deadline 2050, we will be carbon neutral across scope 1, 2, and 3. And then we're giving ourselves a goal of being a carbon neutral supply chain by 2050. So this roadmap requires us not just to have visibility on what we do ourselves, but visibility in what our partners are doing. This notion of this exercise in sustainability requiring collaboration is absolutely critical. And if you start at the elemental level, one of the questions we ask isn't just about price or the quality of materials, but how they were mined, where they were mined, what impact they had to the communities they were part of. It's not just the carbon intensity of the asset, which is important, how much carbon did it take to extract it, to transport it, to package it, but also what impact we're having in the social environments. And all of that information is absolutely critical. And that's where this new START program is so important, because it facilitates both in a digital seamless way into our systems that information, but then allows us to take that information and pass it on in our value chain. So when we create our products, we can say that by using the START program, we can verify the assets that we're buying from Rio Tinto, where they come from, the fidelity of the information in terms of social impact, and then that facilitates a cleaner system end to end. That asset tracing is also absolutely critical, because one of the things that allows us to do is build on common standards. There's a lot of discussion around third-party verification, and there is a proliferation of standards, and that does create some confusion. But I think one of the things we can do is aggregate that information and make it easier. So that transparency and the ability to connect in an expansive way how these standards come together is critically important, and that's exactly what the START program is doing. One of the things we talk to our customers about is how they can take this journey and where to begin. And like most change programs, it starts with setting clear ambitions, measurable scientific-based goals that you can then put resources towards. And some of those decisions really require not only a corporate commitment, but an ability to make sure that you can back that up with choices you're making. So where are you buying your energy? What are your sources of energy? How are you driving efficiency in your existing programs, whether it's your plants, your data centers, your office buildings? What are you doing to modernize your fleets, going from carbon emissions to EV infrastructure? And then adding a layer of digital analytics on all of that. So like any program, the first go around from your strategy to your actions won't achieve the outcomes we want. But if we can better measure, better identify the sources of failure, and in real time use technology and connectivity to drive improvement, then we can go through this optimization cycle faster and faster and find those failure points and address them. And not just do that in our ecosystem, but do that for our partners and our customers. So that element requires us to have information across each step. And again, that's where the START program makes a big difference. I want to leave you with one example. Walmart, which is one of the largest consumer outlets in the United States, was looking to drive their own carbon reduction. One of the things they realized is when they looked at their scope 3, their partners and suppliers frankly made up a much bigger part of the overall carbon footprint, especially in their case. And some of these ranged from large companies to very small operations. And they wanted to create a democratic access point for all these partners to get clean energy programs, whether it was buying clean energy, procuring at competitive rates, whether it was driving services or digital transformation programs. So Schneider has built a platform for Walmart suppliers and partners to do exactly that. And you can see the impact that we expect it to have. Within the first week, we had 170 suppliers sign up, and that number continues to grow. And it's clear that even at the early stages, we're on track to help Walmart save 1 billion tons of emissions in their global supply chain by 2030. And these sort of systemic partnerships are exactly what's required to address the climate challenge that's ahead of all of us. So I want to applaud again what the team at Rio Tinto is doing for the transparency, for the foresight in terms of making this digital, for the aggregation of global standards and actually making it an inclusive process, And I think that will go a long way in making sure we can continue to drive towards our 2050 goals and staying below the 1.5 degrees Celsius requirement. With that, I'll hand over to Tolga. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Aamir. And congratulations to you and the Schneider team on the fantastic achievement on sustainability. And on that note, START, sustainability, traceability, and assurance from Rio Tinto. START is about providing you with transparent and traceable information on how our aluminium products are made. This is the nutrition label of our materials. And this will be brought to our customers through our proprietary blockchain technology. This is radical in providing the transparency and transformation in our journey. Not only does it hand the sustainability metrics right in the hand of our end users, it also shows provenance of our products from our mines all the way to you. We have always maintained that ESG needs to be holistic, and it also needs to help our end users and our customers. What matters to them should matter to us. Aluminium is a new material. Its qualities and the stories still need to be told. But we need to come together as an industry and speak holistically. The real competition for us as an industry is not inside the aluminium sector. The real competition is with other materials out there. And if we have to position our material well, we have to do it with facts and data. Let me give you an example. Plastics originate as a byproduct for the oil and gas industry. Our metal can be from water, and hence water can make the next can, car, building, phone, or planes. Our customers and their customers want to know this precisely. They want to see it, and we have to tell our story. Our hope is that these stories help drive demand for our end customers and for their products. As a primary producer, it starts with us, and it will be holistic as well. START is not just low CO2, it is much beyond that. It is a holistic view enabling sustainability and provenance. START is about empowering a sustainable future for all of us, for your customer and for the consumer of the products containing aluminium. A better informed aluminium industry can make better decisions. A faster informed industry is able to position aluminium quicker to the end users. The digital transformation journey that Rio Tinto has been on allows us to bring the sustainability information to our customers faster. The pandemic made us further realize the importance of providing digital interfaces in supply chain such that our end users are always able to get their products in a seamless manner. In 2020, we brought to you Rio Track, which allowed our customers to view their shipments real time. And today, we bring to you START, which will help position aluminium and hopefully Rio Tinto aluminium as the material of choice based on the green credentials it offers. As a leader in the industry, we believe in helping the market understand sustainability credentials and helping our customers achieve their targets on time or faster. Our customers will receive a sustainability label for each shipment of aluminium for our operations managed by Rio Tinto, providing environmental, social, and governance information across 10 key criteria. The information on the label includes information regarding the aluminium's greenhouse gas position, the CO2 content of your aluminium from bauxite mine to market, water management, renewable energy, recycled content, waste management, safety performance, contribution we make to the communities that we're operating in, supplier due diligence, the governance systems through our whistleblower programs, and certainly diversity. We're also including details regarding our regulatory compliance, our voluntary commitments, and accreditations we have sought for our responsible aluminium. The label is accompanied by an insight report to help explain in real-world terms what it means to purchase START Responsible Aluminium from Rio Tinto, advocating for aluminium as the material of choice across segments such as automotive, packaging, and building and construction. Our customers will receive a half-yearly letter of sustainability to support their sustainability reporting requirements that summarizes the benefits of the aluminium they have purchased from Rio Tinto over the prior 6-month period. It will also enable them to compare against alternative supply sources and materials. We believe START sets a new ambition for responsible aluminium as an industry first. By building START on digital blockchain technology, we can provide traceability and provenance on our aluminium products from our operations to the end consumers seamlessly. We are really excited to be on this journey with you. And we are equally committed to working with you and engaging with others across the aluminium value chain, contributing to climate action with a new, more sustainable product to empower a sustainable future. It all starts here.
So it's a great pleasure today to begin our Fireside Chat as part of this START Empowering Aluminium session. And we're very lucky today to have John Hoffmeister from AB InBev, Vice President of Packaging and Procurement and Sustainability in North America, and Tolga Egrilmezer, Vice President, Sales and Marketing at Aluminium Rio Tinto. So it's great to have you guys on the call today. And we're going to get straight into it with some questions on the interesting topics we have to discuss. So Tolga, after a turbulent year for the whole industry, I'm sure you all had your share of volatility. What made you and the Rio team launch START now?
Look, it's a very good question, Owen. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Look, the COVID and the pandemic, it's been very challenging for everybody, for our employees, for our customers, and the societies at large. We navigated through this pandemic with our focus being on safety and well-being of our teams. That's absolutely paramount for us, but also working with the value chain, our customers, to ensure that they do get the products they need on time and on quality. We kept the focus during this time absolutely simple, focusing on the safety and well-being of our teams and our customers. And here we are today. Look, it's one of these events, I'm sure that everybody would agree, that hopefully it never happens again, but we will never know. It could certainly come back, and we're still right in it appears that's the midst of it. But the understanding the long-term impact of the pandemic, it will also have implications for the consumer behavior and how we consume things. It's starting to become somewhat evident. What we fundamentally believe, though, Owen, is the resiliency and the solid focus we have on our safety and well-being of our employees, but also on our customers. This will not change. And we've been working through the START, this great product prior to the pandemic, and we didn't stop or pause to slow down at all. If anything, we have doubled down actually on START during this period to prepare what we know our customers and the value chain surely will be pulling on us. Look, if we have to position aluminium as a material of choice, at the end of the day, the planning and the execution that has to happen irrespective of the challenges that we're facing as an industry. On that note, if anything, actually, the pandemic certainly underscored our belief that the digital transformation and that radical transparency that I will be talking about is no longer nice to have. It's an absolutely must, and it's paramount. And we wanted to place the product START at the hand of our customers and ultimately end users, consumers during this period.
Yeah, I think there's two things, and I know we're going to come back to these later. But when you're talking there about transparency, something really the industry needs when we're talking about, the competitive landscape that we face. But there's another point there around consumers, which I think is very interesting. And the aluminium industry, maybe in the past, has been a little bit B2B orientated. So, John, and everything Rio's saying there, there's a real emphasis on their consumers and final customers, who obviously are massively impacted by the pandemic. We all are. What is AB InBev seeing in the market that tells you START is what's needed? And will this help you in what you're doing in sustainability?
Yeah, I think there's a word there that is going to be repeated quite often during this conversation today, which is transparency. And that is paramount for our consumers. What we see is consumers demanding more and more transparency in what they buy. And what we value highly is partners like Rio Tinto, who are coming on the journey with us. And what we understand is, and we have a lot of research behind this, our consumers are supporting, through their purchase, sustainably marketed products, right? At a much higher rate than they would traditionally marketed products. And so an initiative like START is an enabler to provide that transparency that then builds upon our objective of building winning brands in the markets in which we operate. And so I don't know that there could be a better union of an upstream partner like Rio Tinto, and then coupled with AB InBev and our brands and the power that our brands bring. We will always communicate anything that we do around better world or sustainability through our brands. That is our connection point with our consumers, and that's where they'll listen to what we're saying.
So it's interesting because you're talking about partnership, and you guys launched your partnership last year, and now we have the pilot of the low carbon cans from Michelob Ultra, and we're starting to see some concrete actions. How is START going to play a role with this? And maybe over to Tolga first, and then back to John on that one.
Sure. Look, from our perspective, the partnership with AB InBev and John's team here has been absolutely spectacular. I mean, despite COVID and all the challenges that we all have been facing, it's been an absolute great partnership. I remember when I spoke to the AB InBev team in St. Louis and Europe last year, one aspect that it kept on coming back, and it was very clear, is this openness to solve the challenges that we're facing as an industry together, which recognize that individual values of our companies are very congruent, but we will only succeed if we execute together and we're aligned. And to John's point, and as I alluded to earlier, be radically transparent in our objectives and working together. Look, InBev is an absolute leader in sustainability with very clear goals around this. Sitting where they are in the supply chain, they clearly see the consumer trends and know what the ultimate end users would like. And we certainly would like to have these insights to ensure that what we create, our offering, certainly would enable partners like AB InBev to meet their targets. But we believe that in the interest of transparency, they shouldn't be always having to ask for us for that data and analytics, if you will. We're the custodians of that data in the upstream. And how do we make sure that we position this in a rapid, transparent, and swift manner, basically? And that's what START is all about. Hopefully, we will get there in a much faster route to make sure that we contribute to AB InBev's targets. But we're not going to stop there. Why, just to answer a question, why not let the data and our data to be the benefit of users like partners like AB InBev? They ultimately are the experts. They know what matters to them most, and ultimately consumers. Making this radically transparent data available swiftly, it will be very critical. Giving you an example, the ELYSIS metal, zero carbon metal that you mentioned, Owen, when a can is made from ELYSIS, we believe that the consumer would like one day ultimately would like to know. When the can is made from hydropowered energy resource, certainly you would want to know. So that when the metal is made from responsibly, ethically sourced aluminium, certainly we believe that the consumer will want to know. That's START, and that's precisely the radical transparency. We're hoping that one day, and benefiting from the expertise of AB InBev, the marketing teams will be able to leverage START for their consumers, for the ultimate users. Maybe one day with the logo, with the QR code, it can show the John's great product to the ultimate consumers, basically, of AB InBev, and they will be able to enjoy the product knowing that it has all the right credentials, responsibly made aluminium in it.
Yeah, I think those kind of points around, when we talk to consumers, we hear so much about low carbon. We hear a lot about recycling, and of course, you have that recycling information in there as well. And AB InBev are sourcing so much on the other side on recycled metal. But John, for you, how does START? How does it fit into the Rio AB InBev MOU?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe important here to start with our company's purpose, which is bringing people together for a better world. And a big part of better world for us is delivering upon our 2025 sustainability goals, which include actions around carbon reduction as well as circular packaging. And in the scope of packaging, carbon footprint is critical, which is why we're looking for ways that we can improve in that space, right? That part of our supply chain honestly needs to be better. In markets like North America and many other critical markets across the globe, the aluminum can is a significant part of our mix, right? Consumers appreciate a lot of the properties that an aluminum can offers to them when they're going out and buying, their favorite beers. So, and as we look at what we need to do in the sustainability realm, our priorities around aluminum include sort of three primary objectives. One is to lightweight that can, right? Figure out how we can take weight out of that can so it's even more efficient than it is today. Additionally, we're looking for ways to improve the amount of recycled content that is used in making those cans. And we have an objective to get to 70% of recycled aluminum content in our cans globally by 2025. And then, and this is where our partnership with Rio Tinto comes in, is we're looking further upstream. And when we do that in particular, we're looking for ways to improve the carbon impact that aluminum has in the marketplace. So, I think in particular, when we started this partnership, we were really excited about Rio's network of low carbon aluminum smelters, particularly in North America, and then the partnership with ELYSIS and what that means in terms of carbon-free smelting technology. And now really START is an evolution and further evidence of Rio's commitment to doing the right thing when it comes to the environment and to the carbon impact.
I think that there's the kind of that kind of key focus on connecting through to the consumers, that message around recycled metal really resonates. But there's something, part of START is very clear for us to understand, which is, you're making beer and people understand beer in cans, and we all, a fair few of us out there drink that. There's another element of what's happening here, which is blockchain. And I'll be honest, I'm far more comfortable with understanding my six-pack than I am with understanding blockchain. So Tolga, why is blockchain the technology partner here, and how does it help customers like AB InBev?
Thanks, Owen. Look, at a concept level, we really toy with various options. Ultimately, technology like blockchain should be an enabler. We don't use technology for the sake of it. It should enhance the experience that we would like to create for our customers and for the whole value chain. With the blockchain, the security encryption features that combines with the flexibility that the technology provides, it was clearly a technology winner for us. That's why we went with blockchain. At the same time, the blockchain is going to allow us the flexibility of what we call the digital filing cabinet. Once on it, then we will be able to, through START and our customers and partner AB InBev, will be able to see the provenance and the sustainability credentials through this technology in a rapid and swift manner. On top of it, with the geopolitical context that we are living through, things like rule of origin or customs or border requirements, potentially in the future, the carbon border adjustment by jurisdictions or by the regions, START will definitely be able to help our customers to access this information on a real-time basis. So it's a very powerful tool, and we wanted to build that securely to prove its credential in terms of provenance, if you will. And we didn't get there in one go. Probably we have catapulted the 3 years of development into a 3 month, if you will. But we believe that digital solution will allow us to move away from the PDFs, printed documents, to more secure encrypted data that will ultimately be shared seamlessly right across the supply chain.
So it feels like blockchain is a pivotal part of that transparency message. It's not a message, it's real transparency.
It's an industry first, absolutely.
So one criticism that we often face when there's events which are focused around sustainability with aluminium is that they're not a unified message. They're not bringing the industry together. But John, when you look at transparency and you look at the aluminum industry, do you see this as a move towards greater transparency as being something which can be a competitive advantage compared to competing materials? And why is that demand there to understand the provenance of the metal?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we sell the majority of our beers, at least in the US market, in aluminum cans. And a lot of other markets, that can is an important part of our product mix, right? And the reason is because the consumer values it. They understand the value that a can offers. And those are manyfold. It's easy to handle, it cools quickly and efficiently. Honestly, it does a great job of protecting our beers, right? So they taste the way we want them to taste when it gets to the consumer's lips. It's safe for a lot of occasions, right? The list goes on. And I'd be remiss if not reminding people of, how recyclable aluminum is, right? So you have this long list of advantages that the can offers to the consumer already. But I think there's one out there, and it's the single biggest challenge we see, which is the carbon impact, right? And that's really why this partnership here with Rio Tinto is so important, because it's putting a marker out there. It's saying, look, we're going to be very clear, we're going to be very open and very transparent. And then if you care as a consumer, you'll be able to see this evolution over time, right? It's an opportunity, honestly, to show our consumers what's possible. And at the end, it should add to the already long list of advantages that aluminum has for many of our consumers.
So you spoke about your 2025 sustainability goals. You spoke about partnership, and we can see kind of lots of things that link into the UN sustainability goals there. But what is success for AB InBev in the sphere of sustainability, and what does that mean for your suppliers? What does that mean for the aluminum supply chain?
I would offer in its simplest form, success will be delivering upon those goals. And I don't want to minimize that. We took a pretty significant leap of faith as a company to put those goals out there. That was 3 years ago when we announced our sustainability goals. It was an evolution of things that we had already been doing, just in a more formalized context. But I would offer that it's more than just delivering upon those goals. We think there's other critical benefits that we're going to realize along this journey of sustainability. One of those is building award-winning brands, right? That's an important part of what we're doing, purpose-driven, winning brands in the market that our consumers trust. We believe our Better World initiatives are a major contributor to building that trust with our consumers. Additionally, though, we think another benefit is going to be a better educated, more well-connected supply chain. And Tolga mentioned some of this already. And for us, one way that we started to connect our supply chain last year, we announced a platform that we call Eclipse. And the purpose of Eclipse is to do just that, right? It's to do things like standard ways of measuring against our objectives, right? It's best practice sharing, but it's connecting the links in our supply chain so that we understand what each of us is doing independently, but then more importantly, finding ways to connect that. Now, of course, we're doing it with the objective of helping to deliver our 2025 goals, but we also know that there's benefits for each link of that chain that exists beyond that. So it is first of kind in the beverage industry, our Eclipse platform that is. Again, launched with the objective of helping us get to our 2025 initiatives, but it also allows for solutions and solution sharing across our network.
I think what AB InBev in a way is kind of a finger on the pulse to the end consumer, which sometimes when you're back as a big industrial facility, you don't quite have that connection. So something that people say to us is, well, the consumer may change what is demanded of these big industrial companies, but this is kind of nearly becoming something quite quantitative. You guys sense it, you know this is the impact it's going to have on your brands, and it's flowing back through your supply chain. So thinking about that and thinking about the kind of the risks, because there are risks on a sustainability footing for aluminium. You mentioned carbon footprint. Tolga, for you, what is the risk you pay most attention to? You're all the way on the upstream, so we'll get your perspective, and then go down to John and get the perspective of the person closest to the end consumer.
Look, for us, being an upstream company, it's very clear. What you alluded to, ESG, it's absolutely not a threat, but it is a fundamental license to operate, foundation, and also an opportunity for our industry. And it is a great opportunity for it to showcase its great green credentials as well. But I'd like to also mention an important topic. We've been talking about the low CO2, which is critical. But if we speak only one metric versus the others, just because in this instance, it might suit us the most in North America, lowest CO2 aluminum producers, I don't think we're doing justice to the industry. I do believe it will severely and grossly miss the point of all industry getting together and not talking about one metric. And I will even go further, and we will probably say that it could potentially harm the industry. And I'll try to allude to that. If you take carbon, just as an example, just based on where we operate, low carbon is playing to the strength that we have in the system in North America. But does that really serve the entire value chain and the supply chain to our customers and the end users like AB InBev? Arguably and possibly not. And we do believe that sustainability has to be broad, it needs to be holistic, and it has to be much more than low CO2 alone. And certainly low CO2 will be an important foundation, but taking this as a short-termist, a very myopic view, if you will, it could be a threat to the industry. This is one of the reasons that we want to articulate the value of responsible aluminium. Partners like AB InBev and Rio Tinto getting together, not only looking at one metric, but the broad set of metrics together to succeed, and the whole ecosystem, if you will, finding a solution. This is where START will ultimately succeed when it brings the value to the partners like AB InBev through that radical transparency. And the consumers will have a choice of these green credentials. And ultimately, we do hope and very much wish that it will enable AB InBev to talk to the end users, consumers like us, quite directly, building on these credentials of aluminium, be it low CO2 primary aluminium, as John alluded to, certainly building on the strength of aluminum of recycled content.
Yeah. And then, John, maybe to broaden it to you, so what for you is the biggest threat to aluminium or any material when it comes to ESG and sustainability?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with, our company has a series of 10 principles. Those 10 principles guide what we do every day. One of those 10 principles is that the consumer is the boss, right? So we're always keen to live up to those expectations that our consumers have for us, right? And we have piles of research, as I mentioned earlier, that consumers are moving very rapidly towards sustainably marketed products, right? So what they're saying is, hey, look, this is a priority for us. And we also believe strongly that all of our sustainability actions need to be marketed through our brands. That's our most powerful tool to talk to our consumers. So we've spoken in the past about Budweiser and efforts on renewable electricity. Now we're taking a step with the Michelob Ultra brand, and we're talking about our lowest carbon, most sustainable can. But now to your question of threats. I think the single biggest threat that we have is not living up to those expectations that we've worked hard to establish with our consumers, right? So when we tell our consumers that, hey, look, your favorite beer, Michelob Ultra, is now available in our lowest carbon can ever, what we're doing is we're inviting them in to ask us questions, right? Questions such as, well, okay, what makes it more sustainable? How is it different? What sits behind the statement of the lowest carbon can, most sustainable can? And if we're not able to answer those questions in the right way that they find satisfactory and ultimately build trust behind our brands, then we're actually doing the opposite of what we set out to do, which is to, again, build that trust, to show AB InBev's commitment globally to a better world, right? So for me, that's going to be the single biggest threat. We're asking for a deeper conversation with our consumers. We're offering them more information. That information that we're then playing back to them has to meet their expectations.
I think that these are very common because, following through on your commitments, if you are just saying, look, we're a low carbon aluminium producer, it does bring the question, okay, what are you going to do next? And if there's nothing else coming except you're sitting on some assets, it's not a very convincing story to consumers. So John, then you're clearly massive leader in the beverage market, no question about that at AB InBev. What role is technology going to play in terms of your packaging footprint, thinking about that, and blockchain? So how do those fit together?
Yeah, I think I would start by saying we won't discriminate regarding technologies. They're going to be massively important as we continue to work towards our sustainability goals. So we will use any and all technologies that help us do just that to get where we need to be. That said, we believe that blockchain has some unique advantages with regard to the supply chain. It's well suited to help consumers see that journey, especially as we talk about upstream steps that perhaps certain consumers never considered, right? And that transparency and allowing a consumer to see the journey that their can has been on is a key enabler. And I think Tolga mentioned that, right? The technology is an enabler to what we want, right? We talked about lightweighting, and technology is going to play an important part there. Additionally, we talked about carbon reduction and greenhouse gases and the role that technology will play there. So hopefully one key benefit of the smart platform and blockchain technology will be making it a little bit easier for consumers to understand that journey and then allow them to make the decisions about which products they support as a result.
Okay, so I've had lots of time to ask you guys very interesting questions, and I now is an opportunity for our audience to get to put those questions to you both. So we'll now move over to the question and answer session. So that was great, guys, and now to the audience. Okay, wonderful. We're back now for the live Q&A. So John and Tolga, it's great to have you here for the live question and answer session. And we have lots of questions which have been coming through. So Tolga, we'll start with you. Rio Tinto is speaking about the sustainability efforts by helping customers. How do they help segments like aerospace and automotive?
Thank you, Owen. Look, it's a great question. If we take a step back, just before deep diving into the question, we're looking at three things. One, we alluded in the video, aluminium is a great material. We fundamentally believe in it with incredible potential. It's the material of the future. We also believe in working right across the value chain and through the partnership, not in silos, as I repeatedly try to allude to. So we are really aiming to create new demand for aluminium versus substitute materials. I think that's the key foundation block. The second one is ultimately, whilst doing that, we can't do that in silos. We need to listen to the end users, be it in automotive or aerospace industries. And this is where START, through transparency and having that technology through blockchain, we believe it's going to be very, very critical. If you look into what John and AB InBev is achieving in this space, is absolutely critical, because they made a commitment on climate change, and they put a very clear target in 2025 for carbon reduction. If you go into the aerospace airline industry, United Airlines, which they really made quite a big, bold environmental commitment, I think it was in December 2020, where they will go 100% green in 2050. And if you go into automotive sector, you will see different companies putting equally ambitious targets, such as some of them have an ambitious target in reaching that goal by 2040. Look, when we look at this, split this into different segments in automotive, whilst the energy efficiency, energy use is going to be a critical factor, at the end of the day, the manufacturing of the vehicles and the platform is also where aluminium, where we can help. We believe it has an incredible story. Aluminium as a material, incredibly infinitely recyclable, lightweight. But if you combine that with hydro-powered aluminium, its low carbon footprint, and add onto the 10 metrics that we have been talking about through a technology, it will equip, we hope, the OEMs, the suite of data and fact base that is going to help them choose aluminium versus the other competing materials. That's our hope. And we very much hope that what AB InBev started here, listening to the end users and consumers, combining with their own ambitious targets of 2025, we were able to meet that target jointly through the partnerships.
You were mentioning there about competing materials. And John, we have a question here about what's your view of aluminum against other materials, such as glass or plastic for packaging?
Yeah, so again, thanks everyone for having me. Tolga, congratulations on the launch of SMART. For us, one of our principles, one of the guiding principles in terms of how we guide our business is that the consumer is the boss. And aluminum packaging has always been a big segment of our offering to our consumers. And I think the benefits are obvious. When you talk about beer, aluminum cans are easy to handle. They transport very well. Very importantly, they protect our beers from oxygen and light, which can be harmful. It is a food product. The fresher it is, the better it is. And they're pretty much applicable in any occasion, right? They go places that other materials can. But at the end of the day, the consumer votes, and we sell more than 2/3 of our beer, at least in the United States market, and globally in a majority of the occasions, aluminum is the dominant package. And then I guess, I'd be remiss without saying that, of course, it's infinitely recyclable. So in terms of the sustainability benefits, they're massive. And that's a pretty powerful value proposition behind aluminum for our consumers.
Okay, so it's been, very clear there about what the customer message is. We have another question about investors. So a lot of what we're doing here is talking about it from a customer perspective, but maybe one over to Tolga, we see investors asking about ESG credentials. Can we, and this is from somebody, can they share the START labels with shareholders to show the green credentials?
I think it's a great question. Thank you very much for that. The short answer is absolutely yes. The whole purpose of START is equipping the entire value chain, be it our customers or ultimately those end users and our partners like AB InBev here, who uses this material to take this data and fact base and radically share it with their investors and with the financing arrangements, should they need to, or with their employees, or with their end users. So the possibilities are quite endless, actually. From our standpoint, what we're trying to do is equip genuinely the entire value chain with these 10 metrics, radical transparency, not focusing on one metric such as CO2, through which the entire value chain would look at this material coming from Rio Tinto with these credentials. I would then be able to position it as I see fit based on the demands that I'm seeing from my customers or from the end users or from investors, analysts, banks, and other institutions. The short answer is absolutely. This is, among others, one of the key purpose of START, to make that data available securely on the blockchain technology as well in the future.
So there's a follow-up on this one, Tolga. Banks are now talking to companies about green financing, sustainable financing. How can you help with these such that we're able to get a better financing rate?
Again, it's a very good question. It's a very clear and growing interest from the value chain with this. Look, what we see today clearly on the banks, they are structuring financial instruments that provide preferable rates based on the credentials of the metal. We have seen that. But it's also, we need to be humble, it's also an education process. It's a new type of product offering as well. What we've been focusing on is making sure, articulating the credentials of our metal, responsible aluminium, through when they secure the metal through Rio Tinto, this is what they are getting. This is what they would be through the third-party certifications that will enable them to validate the credentials that we're offering them. We're clearly seeing that also not only from this value chain, but from the institutional investor as well. We touched upon it in the earlier questions. Clearly, they want to ensure that the ESG credentials are critical and they're part of the performance metrics that they're using to assess companies. And certainly, it's becoming a much more prominent investment decision metric now. And it is quite critical for the whole value chain if this is one of the drivers. It's not only from an investor standpoint, for the consumers, customers, and the value chain. We do believe START will hopefully help both the stakeholders, for us, for our customers, but for a broader range of stakeholders to make the right decisions.
Okay, so there's a good follow-up here around traceability for John. So John, how does AB InBev intend to expand the traceability for other packaging materials, such as plastic and glass, and how about other primary raw materials such as hops, barley, and anything on that side?
Yeah, this is a great question. When we launched our sustainability objectives 3 years ago, one of those was specifically related to our farmers. And as you can imagine, we're the world's largest brewer. We work in markets all over the world, and there's quite a variation in terms of what that raw material supply chain looks like. So inside of that, one of our 4 sustainability objectives was for our farmers to be skilled, connected, and financially empowered. And there were a lot of opportunities for us to bring what we would call some basics to that community of raw material suppliers. And we did that under a platform at the time called Smart Barley, which we are now expanding to other forms of raw materials. The Smart Barley platform enabled a couple of things. Best practice sharing across regions. So some basic information about things that were working in certain markets that potentially had application in others. But at sort of its base level, it was just creating a network globally amongst our farmers that allowed them to do that. So I would say in the packaging space, we're probably more advanced. We're not worried about, again, think of some farmers who don't have an internet connection. Think of generational farmers in certain regions that have done things in a very basic way. And it's worked for many generations. So I would say that the objective is the same. We believe in connecting the dots from start to finish on our supply chain. I would say initiatives like this, though, are probably steps ahead of what we might be encountering on our raw material side.
So you got Smart Barley, Start Aluminum. Does the next initiative have to rhyme, or you can maybe leave it off?
Yeah, we'll see. For sure, Smart and Start.
No, that's really great. The next one's in for Tolga. Tolga, this one is on something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Regions like North America and Europe are starting to talk about carbon borders and rule of origin for the material used. Will mechanisms like START help with that?
Again, it's a great question. Let's tackle that maybe on two fronts. If we start with the carbon borders, look, we're also watching this with great interest, staying very close to the governments and regulators, if you will. But there's a clear drive for both institutions, governments and the regulators, to address the impact of the climate change. That's real, it's very present, whether it's Europe, North America, and some part of the other parts of the world, if you will. And what we're seeing is countries are setting specific carbon neutral targets as well, which in itself is quite a massive, big step, actually, for not only countries, but for the industries as well. And it is also quite prevailing in Europe and North America. We're watching it with great interest and very carefully as well. In that context, aluminium is absolutely seen as an essential material in these discussions. So sustainability credentials of that metal, more important, the provenance of the metal, we believe will be very much needed when metal or materials crosses multiple borders. The trade doesn't know boundaries, and despite the geopolitical context that we live in, it's still a trade that materials need to flow seamlessly between the regions, if you will. The provenance piece of it is going to be very, very critical. And in that context, START will certainly provide this transparency and traceability to satisfy these type of future outcomes. You can say that we're actually future-proofing, in a humble way from our standpoint, the value chain, so that in the future, if this eventuates the carbon borders, or there might be some different mechanisms, if you will, through this radical transparency platform, we will be ready, and we will ensure that our customers and users will be able to use that very seamlessly. It's a great platform, if you will. When it comes to provenance and rules of origin, if you will, it's again a very critical area, actually. If you look into the automotive industry, the North America, actually, USMCA, the OEMs certainly do have to show and comply with the rule of origin for the materials that they procure. And on top of it, customs authorities, how do you make sure that the goods flow do actually comply with the provenance requirements of the materials crossing the borders, if you will? Again, the START through blockchain platform that is secure will provide directly this information in the hands of the customers. And certainly we're hoping in the future in the OEMs and for the customs and government authorities as well. So it's quite a powerful platform, not only on the carbon border, but also if that eventuates again, or the rule of origin that is very real at the moment, it's going to be a powerful platform.
Yeah, it's interesting for the rules of origin, which is really happening today. I think we read some stuff from the European Parliament on carbon border, and in that they specifically mentioned blockchain as something that needs to be investigated as an option. So already some things happening there. John, I've got one for you on the specifics for AB InBev. Your Eclipse Forum already draws your suppliers together for sustainability targets. What would you want your suppliers to focus on next in 2021 near term?
Yeah, so Owen, the Eclipse platform was launched several years ago, 2 years ago, and it started with a kickoff event. And at that time, it was a 2-day event. It brought leadership from our entire supplier base together and really created an environment where we could share. Obviously, in 2020, we had to call an audible. We went to a virtual event. And the other big thing that we introduced this year around our Eclipse Forum was third-party support, so that we had work streams that our suppliers could opt into. And it was about problem solving together. So we always knew when we launched our sustainability objectives at AB InBev that it was something we had to do with our with our suppliers. It was not something, in order for us to get to our objectives, we cannot do it alone. We've known that from the beginning. Our Eclipse Forum is the platform that allows us to do that. So if I'm thinking ahead to 2021 or 2022, what do we want to focus on? What's most important is participation. Because what we want to do is exactly what we're doing with our low carbon can, is we want to pilot. So we need to be out in the marketplace testing our sustainability pilots to see consumer reaction. There's educational elements, there's consumer demand elements, and then there's just purely the technologies behind some of these sustainability objectives. Do they in fact work? Do our consumers understand them? How we use our brands to communicate that. So we're very proud of Eclipse and what it stands for. And we're in the mode of transitioning that to a daily event compared to something that's an annual or biannual event, if that makes sense.
It's kind of, I think whenever we start to talk about sustainability goals, the partnership, participation becoming really strong. And there's a good question here about your partnership between Rio and AB InBev. So over to you, Tolga. We heard about the partnership and then Michelob Ultra cans. What's next for your partnership?
I guess it's again a great question. It's a very humble start, but we're super excited. We just signed the MOU only a few months ago. We now have the actual product, and we look forward to building on that together with John. We will listen and let's see if we can expand it to other brands, other exciting partnership, but we're really ready and it's super exciting. John, maybe it's over to you.
Yeah, it's one thing we have been holding up inside of our organization. It's in the marketplace now. A lot of people behind the scenes on my team throughout the organization put a lot of energy into getting this can to the market. And so to have that tangible result in hand, and now we're in the process of getting that feedback from the consumers, which is gold for us. It really tells us what we believe is that our consumers care, especially on a brand like Ultra. And so, yeah, the partnership and the team at Rio Tinto has been nothing but supportive. So I think it's just the beginning of something that's going to be big and long-term for us.
Yeah, it's great to see tangible things. And maybe this is a good lead into the next question. So what's your advice, John, to the aluminium industry on the topic of sustainability? Recycled content remains a key element of the holistic approach to sustainability for AB InBev. What is your current corporate thinking about how to boost used beverage can recycling rates in the US and the EU?
This is an interesting question. Aluminum, as I started with, has so many advantages. The fact that it can be recycled infinitely is one I mentioned earlier. And yet, at least in the US, we seem to be stuck at a certain recycle rate. And so while there are all these advantages, I think my advice would be, let's not sort of rest on our laurels. We got to get moving. I know some other big CPGs, particular beverage companies, have talked a lot, both publicly and behind closed doors, about how to do that. We have as well. We believe there is an opportunity to improve those recycle rates. The markets are very different, I think, as you know. In general, there's a more educated consumer in Europe around different streams of recycling. That hasn't broken through in the US. I think it can, and I ultimately think it will. By how it gets there is unclear to us. Is that by states or federal government mandating that we go to something other than single stream recycling? The landscape is very complex. You have municipalities, sort of small populations acting independently. So at some point,
I'm going to jump in, John.
Sure.
We've come up to time, and I think the recycling point is fascinating, and we'd really love to get into it in greater detail, but we've just come up to the end of the time. So I'd like to really thank John and Tolga for the openness in the questions. It's really excellent. There's a post event questionnaire, which will go out. So everybody, please watch out for that. The platform is going to remain open for the next 2 weeks. So you can come back on, you can watch the recorded session, and you can continue to network with people who are on here. And we're now going to pass over to Alf Barrios, who will deliver the closing remarks to the session. So thank you again to Tolga and John. A real pleasure today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As an industry leader in responsible aluminium production, we are committed to using new technology to provide transparency to consumers. Today, as you saw, we are proud to present START Responsible Aluminium. In the past 4 years, we launched the industry's first certified low-carbon aluminium, Renewal. We were the first company to be certified by the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, ASI, as producing responsible aluminium. And we announced the use of ELYSIS, the first zero-carbon aluminium, by Apple for their products. ELYSIS is a joint venture between Rio Tinto and Alcoa, supported by Apple and the governments of Canada and Quebec, to develop a revolutionary smelting technology free of direct carbon emissions. And last year, we announced our groundbreaking partnership with AB InBev. Now, START is another pioneering step in our ongoing journey on sustainability with our customers. We're excited to be on this journey with you, and we're committed to working with you and engaging with others across the aluminium value chain, contributing to climate action with a new, more sustainable product to empower a sustainable future. This new standard for aluminium production, providing transparency, traceability, and technology, gives the information consumers need to make informed decisions. Our vision is that you can showcase the sustainability of the aluminium you purchase from Rio Tinto to consumers delivering full value from a responsible production. Another pioneering first step for Rio Tinto. We look forward to working with you on this next phase. It all starts here.